morning, good evening, good night, good day, good twilight, good whatever. Hello and thank you everybody for coming to my session, including all four Terrys. I just see four Terrys pop into the system. Not sure what's happening there. Thank you all for coming. I must admit, could see so many familiar faces in the crowd. Hopefully this is all material you guys have seen before. I will have to admit that I've rehashed a little bit of this from sessions I've done in the past, just running out of time. But you know, running an iMoot gives me a little bit of an excuse, and if you don't like it, I'll just kick you out. So it does give me a little bit of benefit. And just for the record, that was a joke, so please don't worry. You have to get used to the Australian sense of humour. You can be rather sarcastic. Thank you all for coming to the session. This session I've called Dissection of a Game-Based Moodle course. I wanted to, of course, get a picture of dissection and was pretty certain that any picture I chose was probably not going to be good for whatever time of the day it is or night it is for you. So I found this picture of Frogger and thought, well, that's a game, it's dissection, that works out well. And as Stefan pointed out earlier, it is not my fault that this frog decided to cross the road and throw itself under my tyres. I was just driving my lorry and going home. But moving forward to things that are more important, the idea of this session is there've been lots of people talking about the theories of game-based practice, of different things they're building. What I actually wanted to do is actually show you a course that I have built and taught with, and actually reverse engineer it. As you're going to be going through this, we're going to start off in the presentation. I don't actually have that many slides. It says 21, but we'll promise to get through it pretty quickly. But after that, there's actually a link in the session page that we're actually going to go to a course that I've built. That's something that you may have seen before. Experience it and let me explain why things were done. I'm not a big believer in game for the sake of game. I do believe that the pedagogy should drive it. So we'll go through it as a student first, and then I'm going to come back to the session, turn on screen sharing, and show you how it was built and explain some of the processes behind it. So that's the intent. Without further ado, let's kick in. Gotta love a marketing slide. So before I go marketing, I'm very big on this kind of idea about blinging your Moodle. People who have seen me around the traps before know that I'm very much against text-driven ugly Moodle sites. What we've done to the iMoot site, I think, gives you an idea. I'm very much into things that are visually appealing, things that have some level of engagement to appeal. And so many of the ideas I'm talking about kind of extend from that. In this case, try and take courseware and make it a little bit more exciting. So I do sessions quite regularly, and hence the logo. It's part of what I call the Bling Your Moodle series. I started saying I hate marketing slides. I work for these guys. We do iMoot. I hate marketing slides, so that's it. So why do we do game-based learning? For me, and again, another warning before we move forward, I'm extremely opinionated. I'm very happy to use that term, just for the record. An opinion is something that I firmly believe in. As a consultant, I will sometimes use the word advice, which are things I do recommend all people follow. But an opinion is something that I strongly believe in. And the reason I stress that is my opinions are based on my background and my experiences. My experiences are as a secondary education teacher. You're dealing with 13 to 18-year-olds here in Australia, teaching modern and ancient history. And so the reason I want to stress that is what you're going to hear is kind of based on those expectations. And you need to filter that. Because if you are dealing with adults, if you are dealing with people learning support, then that will change. So I just stress, when I have an opinion, please filter it in your head, think of how it applies to you. My very first opinion is, however, this: engagement is key. If we cannot engage our learner, it is extremely difficult to teach our learner. Now, it's common sense, but it's surprising how quickly it's forgotten when people build their learning courses, because, well, you've all seen them. I won't ask you to dob yourself in, but who here has a friend who has a course that looks like this: PDF, 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 quiz, PDF, quiz? Yep, I'm sure you're all familiar with that. Well, what I'm talking about today is about trying to focus on engagement and why that's so important. Where everybody starts off is with this, what I call a Bagit and Taggart repository. Now, I actually don't want to say this is evil. I'm always very careful of how I come across with this. Everybody starts somewhere. When you're learning a new tool, when you're getting used to a new environment, especially doing blended learning, then yes, using Moodle as a repository is fantastic. But there's no excuse after 6 months of having not moved from that point. That kind of PDF quiz is people who don't grow, who don't extend the system. And so what I want to talk about is, by using things like game-based practice, by putting pedagogy more into the mix, by putting lesson design into the mix, how can we move beyond this Bagit and Taggart repository? And more importantly, and this is, you're going to hear me really, really harp on about this, is how to make it more engaging. Now, the reason I bring up this slide is, for me, engagement is not about bells and whistles. Now, to justify that remark, of course, bells and whistles can bring engagement. In the last session, toward the end of it, Gavin and I started a very brief discussion / debate about, Flash and how engaging that can be and how useful it is for game-based learning. And I'm saying I'm kind of against Flash. It has its place, but too many people rely too much on it. When I talk about engagement, I want to talk about pedagogical engagement. I want to talk about educational engagement. What do I mean by that? Terms like this. I want to talk about, making people want to interact, making people want to repeat, to get them to inquire, to explore, to make them want to query, to make them want to respond, to make them want to create. These are the elements of pedagogical engagement. These are the things that make students engage with the material, and a student who's engaged with the material will engage with the learning, and if they're engaged with the learning, then we have a better chance of getting retention out of it. Now, don't get me wrong, can graphics help with that? Absolutely. But it's a tool, it's not the key to success. And this is why I want to talk about game-based learning, the gamification that we're all talking around so much, because it is one of the popular methods at the moment to get students to want to do this. I do hate sending this PDFs, all my little transitions disappear. So when I talk about engagement, the other thing we want to do is get the students engaged with each other, and this is something that game-based learning is fantastic for in certain environments. Now, this is a little picture I put together that really, for me, illustrates my, I'm too tired. I've been going 28 hours now without sleep. The engine that keeps going, this is really embarrassing. And of course, my brain is telling me combustion engine, which is the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. What am I talking about? An engine that once you start, keeps perpetual. Thank you. Too late. Perpetual engine. If you can start the perpetual engine of your course, then you've got a better chance of getting things moving. And by the way, I've even tried to show this in iMoot with the idea of the badges. The first thing I want to do, and there's no starting point, it's perpetual. Once you get one part going, then you connect with the next. But if I was just to start at the top right, the first thing I try and do is I get people to try and connect with each other. I try and create activities that make them want to connect, and make them want to share. Oh, wait a second, they're collaborating together, they're sharing information, they're giving different points of view, and they're trying to come up with something new with this. Oh, wait a second, they're contributing, they're now putting information back into the system, they're providing knowledge to other students. By providing knowledge to other students, they're connecting, and hopefully from that simple example, you see what I mean by calling it a perpetual motion engine. This is also where Bagit and Taggart courses fail. When you have PDF quiz, you're not engaging this engine. And that's where we start losing retention, we start losing interest. So, I'm not going to read this chat because I'm going to go off target. I'm good enough at doing that at the best of times. So, while gamification is by no means the only method of doing this, there are multiple methods of doing it. Gamification is a very simple way of easily engaging this engine because we start putting carrots in front of the student. Wait for the next slide. So, I like to call this the masterclass. As you can see, that logo doesn't breach on any copyright whatsoever. Keeping with the idea of masterclass, let's go with cooking with games and interactivity. And so I'm very keen to get through some basic slides to explain my concept, and then let's get into actually looking at it. Why did I fall in love with Moodle 9 years ago? I fell in love with Moodle 9 years ago, not because of, it supports different learning styles. And the reason, this is actually a slide I show regularly as part of a course that I do. I show this first one because every e-learning system says, oh, we support learning methodology. No, they don't. Moodle doesn't support learning methodology or pedagogy. The teacher does. What you put into it. What I like about Moodle is the fact that it doesn't lock people down into a standard. Now, there's been lots of talks about debating, templating, and standards and minimum requirements for courseware. It's actually a very interesting discussion to talk about, and one that I can't go into too much now. But my personal view on this, based on an experience I want to share with you, is that I don't like locking teachers into a template. What makes a teacher effective, what makes an instructor effective, is their personality and their teaching style that evolves from that personality. Now, by the way, some people will sit there and read slides and have a relatively monotone voice, and they're still going to get their content across and engage the learner. It works. Some are very text-based, some are kinesthetic, others are communicative. Anybody who's actually heard me talk for 5 minutes know that I don't stop talking. So what I love about Moodle is with all these different tools, all the different methodologies, each course in one Moodle site can be completely different. And I think that if you're an administrator, if you're a manager, and you go through and try and force people into a standard, into a set template, that you're actually doing yourself disservice. And this happens because, and again, I know people like Gavin, who experience this on a regular basis, will understand it. Corporates, they get so caught up in their style guide, they get so caught up in that corporatization of image, that they forget that this isn't an intranet. This is a learning tool. This is a place that we want to engage a learner. So I make such a big deal about it because Moodle doesn't support learning. What Moodle does do is support lots of different teaching styles, and each course can be different. And so this is something I'd like to highlight because what I'm about to show you is not for everybody. I love it. It's something that I use a lot. But it's just one of the methods of using Moodle. The other thing is a line. Now, this is actually a line I heard at iMoot last year. We had a gentleman who I dragged in. He knew nothing about Moodle, but he'd just been on Kickstarter doing a campaign on zombie-based learning, which was a really cool narrative storytelling process. And one line that he talked about that has stayed with me a year later. Just because we built to standards does not mean it has to be built in a standard way. I use this line every time I talk about course development now. Oh, we can't use game-based learning, we can't use narrative-based learning because we are doing standards-based. We need to be able to deliver against these outcomes. Well, that's fine, awesome. But doesn't mean you have to do it in this standard way. So please, steal this line. Please, don't credit me for it. It's annoying I can't think of the gentleman's name right now. If anybody remembers his name, feel free to type in the chat. He did a talk on zombie-based learning. But this is a line I repeat everywhere. They need to understand it. And then moving forward from that, let's talk about different methodologies, different pedagogies of design. Now, I'm assuming that you're all familiar with Moodle 2. Even if you only still have 1.9, you're familiar with 2. You're familiar with the fact that Moodle has conditionals built into it and course completion settings. With course completion, I can now give Moodle a brain that says, I know when something is finished. You finish the forum after 2 posts. You finish this assignment once it's graded. You finish this chat room once you've participated. You finish this PDF once you've read it. So we can give it a brain to finally understand what finished means. David Hunter, thank you, Paul. That's the name I was after. The conditionals, or what we call activity, completion. I can't talk again. Restrict access settings also allow us to do questions such as you can't do this until you've done that. Now, the reason I bring this up is because most organisations I come across, when they see a condition or this restrict access setting, they create what we call a linear flow. This, then this, then this, then this, then this. Now, again, I don't like that, but I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. Now, the reason I make a big deal about that is there is actually a purpose for that. If you are a trainer, let's say you're doing a technical or applied studies, you are training electricians, you don't want to have them exploring a three-phase power supply. That's not a good idea. There is a very specific role of training in certain organisations. But just because that suits some markets doesn't mean it should be applied to all. Many other avenues actually work better through exploration, through understanding, through doing, and again, through embracing each individual student's learning styles. And so the reason I bring this up is that what I use conditionals for is adaptive flow. Most of you already, and you would do this out of habit now, you build to your lowest common denominator when you build an online course. Because we're not there face to face. It's hard to mentor them, and some of you may have processes for that, but most people don't. So what we actually have is we build this course that aims at this lowest person so we don't lose them. When we aim at the lowest person, we lose everybody else. If we're a bit choppy, that's all right. What I'm going to do is kill that, and hopefully that will make it a bit better. Am I choppy for everybody, or am I just choppy for Stefan? Fine here? No, that's okay. It's all his fault. That's fine. The reason I ask is if it's choppy, it means there's local internet issues. If everybody's hearing me choppy, then obviously it'd be an issue of my bandwidth. But if it's fine for some of you and not others, then sadly, there is not much I can do about it. But now it's perfect. Okay. So, yes, there's a reason for that, Carrie. It is not open for enrollment because I did not want people jumping into it early. All right, let's move through the last couple of slides. I'm running out of time. So I said I use adaptive flow. Instead of building to my lowest common denominator, I actually build to my middle ground. I haven't put this slide in this presentation because I use this so often. Everybody who's ever heard me talk hears me use this line. I hate the word e-learning. I refuse to use the word e-learning. The fact that I've used it a couple of times in the presentation was on purpose. E-learning suggests there is a different style of learning. It was originally coined about the tool, but people talk about e-learning because it's different. I strongly, vehemently disagree with that statement. There is no such thing as e-learning because learning already has an E in it. Now that's my catchphrase you can steal. The pedagogy, the methodology, the process of face-to-face learning and online learning is exactly the same. It's just the tool that changes. Face-to-face, what makes education work? And again, feel free to type in the chat, but I'll even volunteer stuff, so I want to keep us moving forward. Face-to-face education works because of mentorship, because of communication, because of peer review. I say peer review in both the formal sense, yes, I'm going to put you into tasks, you can do this in groups of 4. I talk about informally, when everyone got together at lunch and said, gee, I really hated the thing that teacher did, and I didn't understand that. It happens informally when the teacher, i.e. me, does speak too fast, and the student A leans to student B and says, what did he say? I didn't catch that. Communication makes education work. Differentiation makes education work. I do not walk into a classroom with one strict lesson plan that I'm going to strictly follow regardless what everybody does. Again, all of this is common sense. It's common sense, but we forget it when we move online because we're not doing teaching or learning. We're doing this e-learning thing. It must be different. And managers have the same problem. Because they think it is e-learning, they fund it differently. For me to build a course in Moodle typically takes about the same amount of time as it did to build it for my classroom. I still have to lesson plan it. I still have to build my resources. I still have to create some differentiation so I can have tasks for those who are falling behind and tasks for those who are moving ahead. But you can't do any of that if your manager says, I'm not going to pay you extra, or we're going to hire one person to build 50 courses and create a drop it and run, courseware. So these are all things that we have to be aware of. And again, I harp on, because the idea of adaptive flow for me is I will build courses that look like this. Resource, quiz. Now it's not a formal quiz, it's actually an informal quiz. And as they answer it, if they got less than 30%, it brings up one resource. Oh, I didn't quite get that. Here's another way of explaining it, maybe a video. If they got over 90%, here's an additional resource. Oh, you really got that? Well, here's another resource that it can take you a little bit further. And if you just pass, move forward. We can do adaptive flow, which, by the way, is exactly what I do in a classroom with those types of students. Understanding that is a critical element of understanding gamification, because we really want to talk about adapting, having fun. The other thing I want to talk about when we talk about gamification is this misunderstanding of many. Many people see gamification as, oh, look, I'm going to build a game of Pac-Man, but what I'm going to do is instead of trucks, they're going to be King Edward's soldiers. And instead of a frog, it's going to be Braveheart. And he's going to be leaping across the English border and trying to avoid the English soldiers, and occasionally a really fast mayor's going to come around and try and get his village. That's not game-based learning. People try and create stuff in Minecraft. They try and by the way, I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's not what the idea of game-based learning was about. The idea of game-based learning was the use of game elements, such as challenges or feedback or rewards, or dare I say it, badges. And I've been using it to all of you for the last 28 hours, and you have fallen for it hook, line and sinker, because providing you a simple reward has made you want to explore. Providing you a simple reward, many of you have been talking in forums about how did you get it, where was it, how do I get it. In fact, I started my perpetual engine because you started right away, day one, in the forums, talking about these badges, and then you started talking about the badges, you started talking about someone created a forum, not me, but where to find them. So then they started contributing, and then not only did I not create the forum, but then they started collaborating to find them. You guys fell for it. That is actually what game-based learning is about, providing reward mechanisms to reward processes. The other cool thing when you think about it is it's not new. Now, I know for many of you are going to say, oh, look, yes, I've known about game-based practice now for a few years, but for many here, they are still thinking that game-based learning is a new concept. It's not. It's actually a combination of two very well-established concepts. The first one is on the screen at the moment, is problem-based learning. Now, we've been doing this in subjects, especially things like mathematics, for years. There's a strong argument, and I'm not here to put judgment on it, but in Australia especially, there's a strong argument behind things like, the Kumon system isn't effective. Kumon, for those of you who aren't aware, is a process of repetition to remember things like times tables, so it becomes rote rather than understanding. Others will actually say, no, the best way to be able to progress forward in maths is to understand maths, which is why many maths teachers are experiential in their style. Here is a problem, solve it. Did you understand how you solve that? This is why Asian education, when they used to do the abacus was actually about understanding how numbers moved rather than just picturing a digit. So problem-based learning has been around for years. Added to that is the idea of narrative-based learning. And again, we all do this to a certain extent. Now, a narrative doesn't need to be a pretend story. If you're a teacher, if you were a trainer, you'll often have a narrative in your lesson flow because you'll have A leads to B leads to C. I'm telling a narrative right now because I started off with a concept, and concept A to B to C is making sense. And because you're following this story, you're with me on this journey, you're going to remember more of this buckshot that I'm throwing at you in such a short period of time. So narrative can be that style of bringing them along a path of logic. But then the other type of narrative, of course, is telling of stories. And again, the session I referred to last year with Mr. Hunter was zombie-based learning. He actually was using a fictional narrative to engage students who are otherwise disengaged with this subject matter. And so fictional narratives can also aid to bring students along, and then through this fictional narrative you introduce elements of courseware. So wait a second, he's talked about a fictional narrative when you're introducing elements of courseware, but to understand the courseware through a narrative you have to solve it. Yes, people, that is actually what game-based learning is. It's what happens when you combine narrative and problem-based learning. Now you can do that with Sloodle with Second Life, 3D worlds and Minecraft. But you can also do it with lesson design, with graphic design. It's not just about those elements, and it's very important you understand that, because that is actually the course I'm going to be taking you into. Now, that's it. That's it for the hands-on session. Now, what I want you to do, if you can, I'm going to start screen sharing, by the way, as a student, so if you can't do this and you just want to watch, please feel free. But what I'm going to do right now, you actually have to bear with me just for 5 seconds, is I'm actually going to go and open up the other course so you can get in. Now, again, I do apologise for those of you who are trying. It was locked down, so I didn't want people leaping in there early. What am I doing here? Go through 5 seconds. All right, tell me if I did my job correctly. Can I get you, again, don't close this window, because then you'll stop hearing me. If you can open up a new window, or if you want a new browser, and then try and follow that link. No, I haven't started sharing yet. No, I just want to see if people can get there first. Because if I start sharing, I can't actually see the chat, which is really annoying. Has anybody been able to follow the link and actually get into the other course? Okay, one more second. Sorry about this. I do want those who can get into this course to be able to get in. I'm going to ask a techie in the room. Just want to make sure the link you're being sent to. Someone's already done that. 524. Thank you very much. For 1 second, again, because I'm screen sharing. I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff here. My computer is working a little bit slower. Okay, now you should be able to get in. Yep, I'm seeing people saying to get in. Fantastic. Well, I really want to encourage you to go in if you can. If you can't go in, I will screen share. In fact, you know what? I'm going to avoid screen sharing if I can. Rather than tell me you got in, please tell me in the chat if you can't get in, if you want to watch the screen share rather than experience this, because it's better if you experience this. Yes, now so a few of you may have seen this course before. I've actually built this before, but what I wanted to do that was different is actually, for those who haven't played this before, those who haven't seen it, we're going to actually walk through it. I'm actually going to explain why I built it as we're going through it, and then I'm going to log in as a teacher and then show you how I built it. So Martha, if you actually go back to the session page, where you came to Big Blue Button from, right in the middle of the screen is a big link. I've tried to make it big. It says enter the game course here. So when you go back, it says you don't close this screen because otherwise you'll lose it. Just do a new window or a new tab. And then back on that session screen, you go enter the game course here. All right. Okay, for those of you who've played this before, I apologise, but many people here haven't, so let me explain it. This here is a snapshot of a course that I built. This was also during the Australian-Vietnam War. It's always great when I deliver this globally. I hope I do not offend anybody's sensibilities, especially when you do deal with war. It's a difficult subject when you go across cultural borders. This just happens to be the course that I built at the time, and to be honest, I haven't had a chance to rebuild it in something that's more politically correct across cultures. So please just see this as a course for what it is, rather than any kind of political or more aggressive statements. First of all, you're seeing that yes, I do like a bit of use of graphics. I like the use of blocks in courses. Now, people think of blocks as just a place where you have links for navigation and the calendar. They're content areas, they're margins that you can fill with fantastic content. Now, what I want you to see first of all is up the top we've got a first area and there's a place called the Officer's Nest, and underneath it we have achievements unlocked. As you work through this course you've got to unlock achievements, but we won't make it easy on you, soldier. First point, I'm role playing already. We are starting a narrative. The students are soldiers. You have to work with your squad in order to unlock them all. I'm already introducing informally the notion that this course is going to require collaborative effort. Keep an eye out for slouch hats that will reveal secrets when clicked. Now, this is the fun thing. This is what you guys get to explore. On the top right of the screen, you'll already see that underneath the graphic is a little slouch hat. For those of you who aren't familiar, slouch hats were the hats that the Australian diggers used to wear in World War I. If you click on that slouch hat, you'll actually see it loads up a resource. In this case, a resource of an awesome tune by Edwin Starr, which again, if you're on your own systems, you'll be able to hit play and hear the music. Now, what am I doing right here? Again, I want to point out this isn't hats and games for game's sake. With history, we're teaching students to dig, to explore. As a historian, your job is to go and try and discover artifacts and figure out how they fit together. You do not believe what you are told. You gather artifacts, you assess, you cross-reference, and then you make decisions based on various points of view. So the idea of introducing hats is I actually want my students to become the archaeologist, to become the historian, and explore the course. And then through the exploration, they will learn material. Now, from a design, instructional design point of view, what you're looking at there also is not one of my core materials. I just happen to love music. I happen to love music of the Vietnam era. You had some of the most fantastic music, especially anti-war songs come out during that time. So I threw these in here as a way of being able to illustrate a point, engage students, but without worrying about what if a student doesn't find it. If you can go back to the main course page, I know already I can see you guys in the logs running away doing different things. Please go back to the course page. I will let you explore, I promise. Up the top again it says, you can use the Officer's Mess to share your discoveries and coordinate your battle plan. Ah, Officer's Mess. There's a forum. Open up the forum. Vietnam was not a game. Oh, Stefan's already found the Forrest Gump clip. What I want you all to do is put in a post for me. Tell me something you've discovered. All of you at least discovered one hat. Maybe some of you have explored something else already. Again, Stefan's found Forrest Gump. I want you all to go through and list something that you have discovered. It's important that you do this as part of the task. If you can't discover anything, then please just put in a discussion topic. This will make sense when I'm finished. Even if you just want to cheat, you can just put in a discussion topic. And seeing a couple. If you already have put a topic in, what I also would like you to do is respond to somebody else. So once you have put your topic in, respond to somebody else. I'm also going to be a student, so I'm going through here and I've put in my first forum post. In this case, I'm struggling. If you refresh your screens, you'll see a post from me. My struggling is I actually can't find a hat. But, oh, look, Carrie said this is cool. Oh, I'm a struggling student. Oh, fantastic presenter. Well, no, I'm a struggling student right now. So I'm actually going to say, no, don't think so. Can't find a hat. Now, the reason I've asked you all to do one post and one reply is once you have completed that task, go back to the course. You can use the breadcrumbs to go back to the GBL demo. That's just game-based learning. And if you have done a post, and if you have done a reply, And if I have imported my course correctly, I'm starting to often think that maybe I haven't. You should see an award appear. Did anybody get an award appear? And here's the I was dreading people would say no. This is a problem. Just so you know, we're using Moodle 2.5. I think many of you know that. This here is actually the very first build of 2.5. Why is this such a big deal? Because there are a couple of bugs in the import process, and while I thought I tested everything, that obviously is not working the way it's meant to. So just give me a second just to double check it's brought all the settings across.
Is it the with the 30-minute delay on the forum post? I've had this before with the activity tracking. It won't actually mark it's complete till after the 30 minutes is up for the recording, so that you can go in and amend it.
Yeah, no, I haven't experienced that. It normally does do it right away. It's a good thought though, unless something's changed, but normally when I've been running this, it appears typically right away. So please do some exploring. I'll just double check that it's brought all the settings across. Feel free to see if you can find some more hats. See, as a trainer, you always have your backup plan. My backup plan is you guys have to go find some hats. And I am just going to double check. Depressingly, it's looking like the settings have come across, and that best laid plans and everything. That's right. Also, as a seasoned professional, you always have a backup plan. And my backup plan is screen sharing. So just exploring it for a second. I'm hoping you want to get this working so you guys can play with it. As I said, this course does work. I actually going to be providing a link so you can download it shortly. But what we're seeing here is an import bug. Now, I'm pretty certain it's already been fixed. I haven't actually tried on a current version, but this was pretty much a day one release of Moodle 2.5. Thank you for your patience. Just about done there, and then we're going to be able to move to one that I built earlier, as they say in the classics. Something that will load pretty quickly. I am still here, believe it or not. I'm nearly ready with my backup plan, and we should be able to do this test. Okay, so the good news is I'm about to start screen sharing, and so if those of you are exploring, what I would like you now to do is actually come back to the session so I can actually show you how it's going to look. I've logged into a student onto my own demo one, and screen sharing is about to start. just a second. Wait for Java to load. You managed to get a badge. You did get a badge. You are. Is it working now? Well, please don't jump ahead. If it is working for you, that is fantastic. If it's not working for you, again, I will be showing it on the screen in just a second. There we go, start sharing. All right, so now I'm sharing my desktop. So if you are struggling, please feel free to look at the desktop sharing. So as we're starting to talk about, went to Office's mess. Now again, this is my demo site, so it's full of lots of things. While this is real cool, so I have anonymized the data. I'm sure some of you will recognize the slight geekiness of my characters. So just to save some time, the student is here and he's asking for some help. And then once he's finished asking for some help, or leave no man or woman, actually very intentionally shows man because back then there were no women on the front line, and this is historically accurate. Although all of a sudden, thanks to that, I also now have Monty Python in my head. Anyway, I'm now doing a reply to somebody. Now you notice that I did not tell students how to get this first reward. I just told them they could use the Office's mess. So what happens is people start communicating in that. And as they start communicating with each other, they go back and all of a sudden, and now you see it on my screen, once it finally loads, that magically appearing in the middle is leave no man behind. Now this is pre-badges. Moving forward in 2.5, I'd be making this a badge, but this isn't a badge. I'll talk about what it is once we get to the deconstruction element. The reason I did it is the same reason I did it in iMoot. How many of you got a communications badge on the first day? How many of you just all of a sudden got an email about this thing called a communications badge? And then you got confused and excited about why you got this badge. And the first thing you thought to do was to tell somebody you got a badge. And then because you're telling people you got a badge, the people around you are asking, how did you get a badge? Now, by the way, as a teacher, I've started none of this. The student has started the discussion. In adult trainer terms, we have an icebreaker. But not an awkward one led by a trainer who's asked you all to stand up and put your hand on your head and sing Kumbaya. It's actually an icebreaker that's student-driven because they've discovered something, they're sharing something. And in fact, many of you got your communications badge because you started responding to other people and helping them. We have started our perpetual motion engine. This is what I talk about gamification. This isn't a badge for a badge's sake. The first objective I had was to get students working together, communicating, creating relationships that they did not already have, and start to contribute information. So that's what's happening there. So it's a game for a purpose. All right, so we talked about the next one. I need to move this forward because we've lost a bit of time. What I now want you to do is to scroll down the page and have a look at a resource called Background. Now on my screen it's not quite working because I made it rather small. But open up the resource called Background. Now again, I love using blocks on the side of courses, right? People often just create a page. This is just a page in Moodle, is what you're looking at here. It's a page resource. But I like to use blocks to put additional information in. And all those maps aren't there just because of the size. Those are quite large PDFs. It took too long to upload into the system. But each of those icons represents a map, but actually link to a map of battle maps of the US or of Indochina or of Australia. So I use it to kind of put stuff into margins. And in the middle of the screen, there are 4 small photos. Remember, one of the objectives of a historian is to dig deeper. An objective of a historian is to want to investigate, to build a point of view. So what I'm going to do is I've discovered that each 4 of those pictures are actually a link. Now the map pipelines aren't working. As I said, they're too large to upload. What I'm going to do as a student, I've discovered these pictures in the middle of the screen are links. I'm going to open up each one. Now, of course, this wouldn't normally happen, just click, click, click. But what normally happens, if I click on one, it's a nice big version of the picture. And there's a description of this picture. And more importantly, in my case, also a link telling you where I got attribution of where I got this from. But if the student was to go through and investigate in detail all the pictures in the course, I then go back to my front page and I now have unlocked another reward. I am now rewarding digging into resources. I'm now rewarding exploration. This to me is what education is about, and more importantly, in relation to my subject matter, I'm also teaching them what's important as part of that. And again, and by the way, first thing, it's like a magic trick. I will also explain how this was done. This is all done in 2.0, I feel it is. But again, I just want to highlight, this wasn't done because I wanted to give them a random badge, and this is what I was trying to explain to Gavin earlier. The badges, the rewards, are actually driving a pedagogical focus of what I want the student to achieve. All right, so of course they've gone through and done that. Now, the next thing I want to highlight is, if we go down, and some of you actually unlocked the mission already, please note that mission 2 is not yet available. Now, first of all, again, this is just part of that narrative, that storytelling, is it's not a topic, it's a mission. And so these students were going through their missions. You could not do the second mission until you've done the first. And it's not done in a restrictive, this is not yet available, because people often find that hostile. I've dressed it up in narrative. Narrative is great for breaking down barriers of hostility. These 3 resources are each complete just when you view it. So I'm going to cheat and just open them up in a new window very quickly. Close them up again. And I now will have completed those ones there. And the discussion task, and by the way, I love using forums, but what you're seeing here is, the reason I love using forums is how I teach face-to-face is, you guys have seen it, not only do I talk, I ask lots of questions. My way of seeing if you've understood what I've asked is I like to ask a question and see your response come back to me, and that's how I teach face-to-face. Okay, great, can you give me another example of when that would have happened? Oh yeah, that's a fantastic example. Can you give me another way you could have done that? And because that's how I teach, I bring that online. I'm a big user of forums. To give you also another slight segue, how many of you have dealt with educators that say, I did a forum once and no one used it. No one came into it. So I've stopped using them because it's a waste of time. Have any of you had that experience? Again, there is no such thing as e-learning. There's only learning. Have you ever stood in front of a classroom and asked a question and just got blank faces staring back at you? Have you ever stood in the training room, asked a question and just had them all look at you like you were mad? Did that stop you asking questions? Of course not. When you ask a question and a room full of people look at you stupidly, you suddenly think on your feet and you think, okay, well, maybe there's a different way I can ask it. I highlight this as my way of battling this stupidity, and you hear me getting passionate about it. This is a very big thing to me. Because they treat it as e-learning, because they think it's all different and it's something new I have to learn, they forget everything they already knew, which is so frustrating because I know brilliant educators who suffer online. So when I have a forum, I have asked questions in a forum that no one responds to. So I changed the question. In fact, this particular question, the first time I asked it, and this is before actually we had DO 2.0, before I was doing things like this, I used to ask a question about what would happen if conscription was to happen in Australia today. And hardly any students responded. But a year later, I ran exactly the same question. And we had over 100 responses. 2 things changed. The cohort and Australia was doing Gulf War II. Gulf War II all of a sudden made the potential of conscription appear on the radar. And so when you start talking about these things, yes, how I ask a question in one year won't work in the next. Rule 2, back to templates. I hate templates because a course that works one year won't work the next. A course that is pedagogically valid, I hate that term, I hear it used in universities. We have run it through an academic testing process to confirm its the word's not viability, the word, this is my tire's kicking in, it's validity. So yes, it's academically valid. It gets zero use because it doesn't engage, because we don't think of rewording. So what you're now seeing here, I talk about this forum, in this case I'm going to go into it. Well, it's a slight segue. When you do online training, do think about, how do I do this in the online environment? How would I change things? Would I think on my feet? Would I want to go through and change things if the student didn't understand it? So the reason I've done a quick post here is that this task has asked the students to imagine that Australia was at war. So discuss your ideas with your classmates. So this task is to go through and put in a post and reply. So once I've done that, sorry, I do a post and reply. I just said that, but I did a post. Let me just do a quick reply here. And I'm glad to see many of you done mission complete already. You've been figuring it out as you went. You're exploring, you're learning. God forbid. Okay, I now go back to my course. I have completed these. I've met Moodle's completion standards. I have got another badge that mission 1 is complete, and all of a sudden mission 2 is available. Last thing I was just going to focus on, because we talked about it briefly, but we stopped when we had the issue getting in, was going back to the slouch hats. The reason for the slouch hat is, again, is making students, especially in adult world, especially if you work in a technical college, in Australia we call them a TAFE, we have this awful term that says a student will complete it once they have read and understood it. Does anybody else have read and understood as one of their outcomes or criteria? I hate it because read and understood is typically done in our TAFE here in Australia, that they will create a tick box. If you have read and understood this PDF, please click here. And of course, they may have just skimmed it. They may have actually absorbed nothing. All right, well, the other option is that I can prove that they knew it. So I can go through and start building all these quizzes. We'll go toward PDF quiz. Okay, great, we build all these quizzes to prove they have the knowledge. But now we're creating a hostility because we now have an assessment-driven course. Which, by the way, it's all about balance. Of course we need assessment. I'm not saying we don't need assessment. We need assessment to validate what our students know, to go through and meet our outcomes. But not just to say, oh, try and move them on to the next point. So my way of doing it is to make students read. I hide things in the content. Back to the game. Some of the hats on the front page are easy. They're easy because I want them to find them quickly. Others are hidden inside the content. If I opened up Overview, for instance, I had to go through. And the reason I've chosen something tiny and small like a hat, and by the way, it's also the same kind of colours as my text, it's dark colours, is it forces you to read in a little bit more detail, which means that, well, they actually have to read this content. So what now happens is they're absorbing knowledge, and then I get to do my formal assessment to be able to move forward. So this is what I mean by game-based learning. I'm engaging them with the things I'm trying to achieve, first of all, as a teacher. I want them to go through and explore. I want them to gather artifacts. I want them to learn how to collaborate together and share knowledge. These are outcomes. These are objectives that I was trying to get the students to learn. So my games are designed around enforcing and building up those skill sets. So that's it for the first part of this presentation, and I'm glad you're all having fun. Now let me show you how it was built. And the fact that you guys are in there, I'm actually going to go now and log back in as me. Turn everything on. So let me just do this. And I'll show you how it was built, because it actually is not difficult to build. Difficult remembering my passwords. Okay. Yep, that was very difficult. Oh, come on, don't do anything now. What have I done? Ah, the right username. Fantastic, the impact the right username has. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go back to that very same course. I'm going to now show you how to build from a teacher's perspective. Now, what you may have also noticed is as you were doing that, I know the one I was having was an old Moodle site. Did any of you actually notice you were getting badges now for each of those things as well? The reason I've introduced the badges is because that's obviously a new feature. If this was me doing it for Moodle 2, sorry, I'm getting lost here. There we go. For 2.5, then rather than doing the old methodology, I'm about to show you that yes, I would now be using badges to achieve the same thing, but something they can keep and share and promote. Alright, so how is it built? First of all, I'm going to turn editing on. Let's first of all start off with things like the officer's mess. How did these things appear? Can anybody tell me in Moodle terms, what is this? I'm highlighting a particular area here. What is this in Moodle terms? Anybody know? That's right, it's a label. That's all it is, just a label. There's the photo and a line to the left and some text. Okay, so you'll notice that here it is, and here's my officer's mess. The first thing I did when I built the officer's mess, I'm just going to click edit here, is with the officer's mess, I gave it some completion criteria, and I intentionally did not tell the student that was part of the game. Here they had to make 2 posts or replies. And by the way, I've done that to make it easy for training. When I actually first rolled it out, it was very specific. It was 1 discussion and 1 reply. But you can see the great thing about these conditions, so these completion settings, is you can make them as open or as detailed as you'd like to have it. So for the sake of training, you just had to make 2 posts or replies. So once a student's made 2 posts or replies, it will list that as complete, which then brings me down to the label. If I edit my label, I have the ability of what's called restrict access, or what you often hear referred to in Moodle world as conditional activity. Now with conditional activity, I can say, restrict access. What restricts access to this particular item? Now I'm not here to teach you all about restrict access right now. You can do all kinds of cool things. But for this particular example, the officer's mess must be marked complete. And if that's the case, if the officer's mess is marked complete, they'll see it. If it's not marked complete, hide it entirely. And that's why it didn't appear until we did the posts in the forum. So that's the first thing. Let the cat out, please. There's a cat. I'm not sure about the reference of cat. Let's talk about the next thing, the slouch hats. Now the slouch hats didn't actually appear. So I just have to say something in the background. Both Shane and Meg are both saying, have to wrap Julian up, have to wrap Julian up. Yes, I've got the message, you've been talking about it. I always run late, you guys get used to it. I will try and cover those few things as quickly as I can. So the slouch hats, how do they operate? If I turn editing off, what a student saw was a course that just had, for my demo here, these 2 topics. But if I turn editing on, you'll notice all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of additional resources. These are what are called orphaned activities. If you're not familiar with orphaned activities, get familiar. They're fantastic for doing game-based learning. An orphaned activity is material that is inside a topic that is not currently being seen. I'm very carefully avoiding the use of the word hidden. If something in Moodle is hidden, the I, if you hide something in Moodle, it means it is not visible and not accessible. I need to stress that. If it is hidden, it is not visible and not accessible. So how can I make them not visible but accessible? It's called an orphan activity. Please note that right now I have 2 topics. These here are all topics that just aren't showing. If I was to hit the plus symbol down here, I love this it came in 2.4. If I go increase number of sections, this area here, topic 4, is now going to show up. No, let's just do that again, sorry. Increase number of topics. Topic 4. All of these are just materials I put into topic 4. But once I had built them all here, and by the way, they're the full pictures of the French troops, and you clicked on those pictures in the article, they were linking to here. Each of these, when you went to edit them, each of these were complete once the student had viewed them. You know what makes it complete? Wait this below. This particular photo is complete once the student views it. Well, that was pretty easy. The areas on the right-hand side, you know, in the margins, they link to things down here. The slouch hats, I mentioned, you know, I love music, so they link to fantastic music from the era. They also link to videos. So some of you said you found Forrest Gump. I think one person mentioned they found Apocalypse Now. The problem from a historian's perspective is those aren't actually historical artifacts. They're recreations. They're surprisingly accurate recreation, but they are not artifacts. So I couldn't use them as part of my core criteria, my core material. But I could happily use them as incentives, as carrots. What you hear me keep using the word carrot, I should stress that traditionally, online learning, we use a stick. Do this or you fail. Do this or you are not yet competent. Do this or you are not going to complete the course. I'm providing do this and I'll give you something. Explore this and I'll reward you with a badge or a resource or an activity or an interaction. That is game-based learning. What are each of these? Well, each of those photos was just a file resource. The great thing about Moodle, if you didn't know about it, this is a file resource. I just put the name and the description, and in appearance, display resource name, display resource description, and it turns into that nice page that you saw for you. It puts the picture nice and large and the description underneath. So no need for a fancy page and embedding pictures. I just went file resource picture, show name, show description. The audio files, yes, they were pages because I wanted to embed audio and put a nice descriptor around it and you know, cover art. So these down here, the videos and so forth, they were all pages because of how I wanted to display them. This here, however, is one thing that everybody gets caught out on. Mission not yet available. Can anybody tell me, especially those who have played with conditions before, how did I get this to work? Conditions I've been talking about have been, if you know, you can't listen until you've done that. This is restricted until you've done that. Mission not yet available. Ah, well picked, Miriam. So many people have no idea what to do with a certain setting, and yet it's one of my favourites. When we go to restrict access, and this is just another label which had this picture of the camp. Restrict access. This is only available when that discussion task was not complete. Now the discussion task was the last task they had to do in topic 1. I could have linked to every individual item, but because it was going through A, then B, then C, I just had to tie it to the last task. This label appeared until that was not marked complete. Fantastic feature. The other way I use it, on a slight segue, is also for differentiation of tasks. I'm a big believer in differentiation. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the term, if you create one task, write a 4-page essay on causes of conflict in the Middle East. Just because a student can't write a 4-page essay, does that mean they don't have the knowledge? Just because they can't write the essay, does that mean they don't have the knowledge? I'm hoping the answer you're typing in is no. That just may not be their way of bringing it out. We have to talk about learning style. Again, people talk about aiming at lowest common denominator. Forget it. I like to build 3 tasks. And yes, it's more work for me. But here is one task where you have to upload a video. Here's another task where you have to write an essay. And here's another task where you have to present a 20-minute talk in class. Now, task A will only show up if B and C are not yet marked complete. The reason I'm make such a big deal out of that, if you put 3 tasks into a course, do students read instructions? Typically. If I said, please do one of the 3 following, I can tell you, and this is my experience, lots of students actually do all 3. It's awful. And then they start demanding extra credit, and it becomes a pain. So I use this condition to take care of it. Once you've done one, the other 2 disappear. So you're not yet complete is a fantastic feature if you haven't played with it. So that's what I talk about the game-based course. And all the things I showed you is standard Moodle. In 2.0, you could do all of that. Just to extend what's new, in 2.3, they introduced a feature I want to show you. But of course, in 2.5, we introduced badges. In 2.3, they finally introduced something that I've been waiting on for so long. Yes, from 2.0 onwards, I could do completion settings and restrict access on a per resource and activity. Every resource and activity has that option. But what you could do as of 2.3 is actually put restrict access on a whole topic, which is fantastic. Rather than having to set conditions for 15 individual items, you can now go through and say this whole topic only is restricted until you meet point X. So if you're using 2.3 or above, you will have that feature to do restrict access at a topic level. But of course, 2.5 introduced badges. And the last of my time, which is fast running out, I want to show you badges. Yes, I'm being told to wind up. You know the great thing about being one of the facilitators of iMoot? I get to ignore my own people. Now, what time is the next session due to start? Please, I've got to make sure I don't give you back some other fantastic presenters. So we'll have to have some time for questions as well. How do we do badges? This is very quick. Under administration, in 2.5 we have badges, and I can add a new badge. When you add a badge, you give it a name, doing stuff, a description. If you've been receiving badges on our site, you can actually get the name and description. You've been seeing those appearing. An image. Of course, I'm going to have to quickly cheat here. Pictures, 2013 badges. Look how many badges we've been having. Oh, there's so many you haven't found yet. So I'm uploading my picture. And if you wish, your badges can even expire. Now, if you want more information on badges, please, there's going to be a session on badges later in the program. More information on badges, come there. The reason I'm quickly showing you this is just to show how this ties into the game-based learning. When you create a badge, you can choose how it's issued. It can be done manually by an individual. The teacher awards it for special reasons. It can be done based on a course completion. You've completed the course. Here is a badge. So it's not necessarily a game. It's actually being used for portfolio. Some people are using their Mozilla backpacks, as they're called, as a portfolio level. But you can also do it based on activity completion. The reason you are getting badges now in 2.5 for completing those things is I actually said the badge for No Man Left Behind appears when you've completed the officer's mess. The badge for Photo Expert appears once you've completed those 4 things. So exactly the same process occurs here. The difference here is that you can also see a list of recipients, which is fantastic. So you can always have a quick list of who's actually completed these things. It also makes it, rather than having to go through logs or reports, I can also track student progress just by looking at the recipients and badges now. It's a huge boon. So, wow! Let's move back. I'm stopping the screen sharing. Let's all move back to the course space. That's the section of the course. Not only am I talking about game-based learning, I hope you understand why I built things certain ways. It wasn't for the sake of it. It wasn't for the novelty factor. Now, to drive pedagogical processes, pedagogical principles, things I wanted students to achieve, to learn, skills I wanted them to gain, the game, which was a combination of narrative and problem solving, was just another mechanism to make them want to do it. I'm stopping because I can go on for hours. Anybody who's met me will know that. I want to open up for questions before we really have to disappear. So, questions, please feel free to either use the microphone if you prefer to, or in chat, and I'll answer what I can. Or stunned silence. That works just as well. Gavin, hand up. All yours. Floor is yours. Did you have a question, Gavin, or were you just showing that you had a hand up? Look,
Okay, can you hear me now?
yes, I can.
Sorry. I was just going to say, the course which you showed there appeals to the explorer type of gamer, which is only one of the four. How do you suggest combining a course which caters for all four types?
Look, that's a challenge, and I think the only answer I can give you is what you know. I always build for my audience. As you said, in this case, I was building for an explorer. I was also building for teenage boys. I was building for competitors. So badges was a good way of getting them engaged. I think it's extremely difficult to build games that will appeal to all four. I think it's like any lesson. You build certain tasks. You build sub-games. In this case, this course was one big game following one standard model because I was really blessed to have one style of gamer in this kind of cohort. But otherwise, if I did have all four styles of gamer, then yes, I would then build smaller games, sub games that would lead in and then hopefully engage each. As an educator, you always have to be smart. Think about your students, think about what's there. Maybe give them a choice of games, make it a choose your own adventure. The trick here, and I know it's a little bit of a segue, but it's something that's really important to highlight, and I mentioned it earlier. To create these things takes time. I mentioned that the time it used to take me to create a lesson plan and deliver a physical course is pretty much nearly neck on neck on how long it took to build that. Because to be able to build that, I had to lesson plan it. I had to create my flow. I had to know what I was going to use. I then had to build the resources and assemble it the same way I would have done face-to-face, which meant that if I was normally given a week for face-to-face lesson planning, I would be demanding a week of lesson planning for my online course. And I answer that with Gavin's question. Could I do a course that targets all four styles? Yes. Of course, there'd be difficulties with that and challenges and more importantly, time. So yeah, I know it's a long-winded answer, Gavin, and probably the one you're expecting, but it just comes down to being a teacher, to picking your cohort, knowing what kind of things they respond well to and getting the mix that suits. There's a fifth type? I'm not aware of a fifth type. It needs to be led. Yes, I have heard of that, Don, and I do philosophically disagree with it. A game by its definition is, at least for me, is something that is driving them, not leading. So yeah, it's a point of philosophical and certainly what's what I'm after, academic argument. But yeah, no, I do disagree with the lead statement. I do think that defeats much of the purpose. If you're going back into a lead style, then yes, you just have interactive activities that I'm telling you to do. Last 2 minutes, I think. I'm going to have to really call a quit here. Any other questions out there? Siggy, great point. How many people had no idea about badges when they joined iMoot? Think about yourselves. Some of you discovered badges and went nuts. Others waited to be told where to find them. Either way, you still engaged with the audience around you. You still went exploring the site. And according to the reports I've been writing, over 98% of our audience currently has at least 3 badges. I say at least because everybody got one. So even if you're saying, oh, but I'm not a gamer, I don't respond to it. You did respond to it. You were exploring. The fact that it was new, that was unexplained, you had to find out. And by the way, that's mostly because you're educators. You have a want to know. You're a lifelong learner. Okay, look, I'm going to wrap this up here now because otherwise I will be lynched. I can see a long-handled cane coming from behind the door. Thank you so much for attending the session. Please, there is a forum inside the course. I will be putting a download link for this course in the main session space. You will be able to download this game if you want to reverse engineer it and import it into your own sites. The backup file, I believe, is 2.2, so you don't need a 2.5 site. I've made sure the backup version is slightly older. I haven't had a chance to do it just because of, well, apparently I'm helping run an iMoot. But it will be there hopefully in the next 24 hours. If not, feel free to badger me, but it should be in the next 24 hours. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of iMoot. I get to wrap myself up. Far from it, Don. There are far better presenters out there than me. I'm passionate, but the knowledge out there in many of the other sessions is far, far greater and more significant. I just had the bells and whistles. Okay. And shameless plug. Follow us on Twitter. I have no idea who that is, but I will accept the shameless plug as long as you follow me as well. Follow Moodle Man. Shameless plug. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you get your toilet break, your caffeine break, whatever break it is that you need. And we'll see you all at the next session, which is, of course, the keynote. Thank you again. Thanks, Marielle. Hugs back to Mexico.